Welcome to Dialogues with Sanford Silverstein. We've been planning this, and we were just waiting for the moment to be right. And I think it's right. How about you, Sanford?
I think it's perfect timing.
Okay. And the reason that it's perfect timing is because of some serendipitous effect, serendipitous incident that happened in Sanford's life that nobody can talk about as well as Sanford. Would you tell the people the story of meeting your former teacher in the Apple Music Store?
Yes. I'm a classical guitar player, have been for over 30 years. And about 10 years ago, I started taking lessons from a guy by the name of Mir Ali, who is a good friend, a truly one-of-a-kind, brilliant individual. You don't meet somebody like that twice in your life, usually. And we sort of lost contact with each other. I stopped taking lessons from him, about 8 years ago or 9 years ago. And I hadn't seen the guy in about 8 years. About 3.5 years ago, my guitar playing suffered a crushing blow. I was no longer able to play really even simple pieces. And this was a really devastating blow to me personally. It fell into a very deep depression. It was difficult.
Now I'd like to tell the people that a classical guitarist needs his thumb and 3 fingers because that's the way you're taught.
Exactly.
I was under the misapprehension that you use all your fingers, but Sanford said no, it's the thumb and these 3.
You don't use the pinky finger.
So if one of your fingers starts to go numb on you and doesn't respond anymore, well, it's time to either pack it in or maybe find somebody who can adapt.
Yeah, find a way around it.
Yeah.
And this is what's happening now. And this is where Mir Ali comes into the picture. About, maybe 3 weeks ago, 3.5 weeks ago, I went to the Apple store at the Eastern Hills Mall to have an issue with my computer resolved. As soon as I walked in, I looked up and there was Mir Ali. And I said, "Why, it's great to see you." And, we just exchanged a few niceties. He said the same thing, "How are you doing?" And we started to catch up. And of course, the question of my guitar playing came up. And he asked me, "Are you still playing?" And I said, "No." It was almost painful to have this subject broached. And I told him no, because I've just had a terrible thing happen. And he looked quite concerned when I said that. And he said, "Tell me about it. What happened?" And I said, "I've been diagnosed by a doctor, and by the way, I was recently diagnosed with this. So I went for 3.5 years not knowing what was wrong with my hand. And very recently, my general care practitioner diagnosed me with a condition called focal dystonia, which happens to, sometimes they call it musician's dystonia. It's quite common. I didn't know until I started doing research on this.
Is this one of those things that other classical guitarists may have happened to them?
Lots of them do. Lots of them do. It happens to trumpet players with their lip sometimes. It can happen to vocalists with their vocal cords. People who do work that requires repetitive motion, like with the hand, the fingers of the hand. In my case, it was the ring finger that suffered from the dystonia. Now, what does that mean? To play classical guitar, you have to have a kind of dynamic relaxation of the fingers. In other words, there has to be controlled attention, but immediate relaxation after you stroke a string. And what was happening to me, and what continues to happen to me, is the ring finger tends to get really tense and pulls away from the strings. And this completely destroyed my ability to play, as I said before, really simple pieces. So I told Mir, I have focal dystonia. Without skipping a beat, he said, I have the same thing. Now, what are the odds? I have exactly the same thing, and you can't let that stop you from playing. And we should talk. And he even referred me to some guy that he's worked with on FaceTime or Skype. Some guy out in, I don't know if he's in Los Angeles, I think he's in California. I think his last name is Sanders. I want to say Jack Sanders, I may be wrong about the name. But we reestablished contact, and he said, why don't you go to our friend Gunilla's party? She's having a party next Saturday.
I didn't know you knew Gunilla, Kester.
I do.
Okay.
Very well. And Gunilla, also a student of Mir's, is another person I had lost contact with. It just happens, and I love her, but she's great. We just haven't really touched base in a while. And he said, here, call her. I still have her number, so I called her. She said, great to hear from you. I didn't invite myself to her party. I just called and she invited me. She said, you have to come to the party. So I went to the party a couple of Saturdays ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago, exactly, to the day. And Mir, of course, was there, and some other people, actually co-workers of mine. So it was a fun time, and it turned into a musical evening. Mir Ali played guitar. Many of Gunilla's friends are guitarists. So it was great.
And you were probably watching Mir play, and you're going, he is doing this.
Yeah. And I noticed a change in his technique. Certain things he was doing, I won't bore you with the technicalities of it, to work around the problem. And at the end of the night, he sat down with me for 5 or 10 minutes, and he said, let me see what's going on with your hand. Play. And I was frankly petrified. I hadn't performed in a while, and certainly hadn't played for the likes of Mir Ali, who's this master guitarist. So awkwardly, and by the way, while all the other musicians were performing, I half-heartedly joined in. Gunilla gave me her guitar, or someone handed me a guitar that happened to be hers, and I played a few notes over the musical experience that was going on. I guess I did okay. And in any event, I played, and within about 10 seconds, he said, okay, stop right there. And he gave me some suggestions of things that I might be doing to make the problem worse. And he suggested, why don't you do this differently? Why don't you do that differently? And he said, he didn't even mention lessons. I didn't mention lessons. What he mentioned was, let's go kayaking. We're a bunch of us are going kayaking tomorrow on Lake Erie. What are you doing? I said, nothing. He said, well, let's go 10 or 11 o'clock. We'll all meet at my studio in Amherst, and then we'll drive to Hamburg Beach, and we'll go kayaking. It's a lot of fun. And I had never gone kayaking, it was interesting he said that, because it was one of the things I wanted to do over the summer. And the summer was drawing to a close. So we all went kayaking, and we had a great time, a lot of fun. I actually met some new friends through this experience, and at Gunilla's party. So I've not only have I reestablished contact with Gunilla Kester, with Mir Ali, but I also made some new friends that I think are going to turn into really good, lasting friendships. So while we were kayaking, at some point I mentioned maybe we should do lessons. And he said, yeah, I could do that, absolutely. So Mir Ali, at some point, I think the next week, which was last weekend, we went kayaking again, and he started to talk about maybe me getting another guitar, and he'd keep his eyes out for it. And does that mean that he kind of believes if you're really serious about the guitar, you should have a serious guitar? Yes, okay. And I've always felt that way. But I decided in the last few years, when I wanted to buy a new guitar, I thought, what's the point if I can't play? Because you thought, it's hopeless. It's hopeless. There's absolutely no point. Yeah. So, long story short, Mir called me, and he said, what are you doing today? I said, well, I'm having a few people over, and then I've got to go out later on, but I'll be free around 4:30 for about an hour if you come by. This is last Monday. And he said, I'll be over. I have a guitar that you might be interested in. I just want you to play it, get a feel for it, see what this thing sounds like. He said, I'm telling you, a deal like this does not come around very often. And I said, okay, I'll check it out. And I just fell in love with the instrument. It has a beautiful tone, wonderful. I didn't play very well. Again, he handed me the guitar, and there was, again, that uncomfortable feeling. He sat in front of me, and he said, play something for me. Oh boy. So I played a piece badly. I got through it. And he looked at me and he said, you know, actually, your tone is not too bad. It's pretty good. And that's the first time he ever said anything good about my tone. Although 10 years ago, he was always very insistent that, no, the tone is wrong. So he said, it actually sounds good in the guitar. It just has a beautiful sound. And I don't think he was just trying to sell me a guitar, you know. He's a great guy. And I thought, give me 3 days to decide what I'm going to do about this. Long and the short of it is, I didn't take 3 days. The next day, I had a substantial amount of money. I went to his studio and I gave him the money.
Now, when you were sleeping at night,
later that night, yes.
Were you thinking about it? Should I get the guitar, or maybe I shouldn't get the
Yes,
guitar?
I was.
Okay.
I stared at the ceiling for a while before going to sleep because it was an investment.
Sure.
And here's the thing. It wasn't just an investment. It was not just the money. It's spending a considerable sum when I can no longer play very well. You see what I mean? So I told Mir, I said...
It's kind of like a crossing of the Rubicon.
Yes.
Because you're saying, if I spend this much money, I'm making a life commitment.
I'm committed to playing this, so I have to be worthy of that investment. I feel like it's an investment in myself.
Yeah.
And I'm at a point in my life where I'm making a lot of personal changes in my life.
Yeah.
And to me, this is just, it seems to go into that, fit in with that process that I'm going through right now. You know.
Now, should we keep our audience waiting much longer, or should they actually hear you play something?
Sure.
Now, I'd like to point out, he hasn't learned the new technique yet. He hasn't even taken any lessons in the new technique. He's just going to try his best with the limited physical function that he has to play something for you. Is that a good introduction?
Yes, it is. And I will say this piece, it was written by Villa-Lobos, who was a great Brazilian musician. As a young man, he made his living playing the guitar on street corners, but he also knew every instrument in the symphony orchestra. He wrote 12 symphonies. He wrote lots of music for guitar. Some would say not enough. The reason I'm playing this particular piece is because it falls really well under the fingers. With this condition, just something about the demands on the right hand technique doesn't seem to be as affected by the dystonia issue. Okay? So he wrote 6 preludes, actually. The 6th one is lost, and his wife always said the 6th one was the most beautiful of the 6 preludes. So that's sort of the holy grail, one of the holy grails for guitar literature. But this is prelude number 1, Villa-Lobos.
That's the best I've ever heard you play that.
Thanks.
I've heard him play it
With the
about
seat of my pants.
5 times, but that is the best. Maybe you're getting better.
Let's hope so.
So, I need this music to decompress from that music.
So do I. Actually. It's always when I play, sometimes it's a little nerve-wracking because sometimes I feel like a tightrope walker walking over a tightrope.
Huh.
And I know I'm bound to slip, and I did a few times.
Yeah.
And maybe a really good player would say more than a few. And there's always that uneasy sense that, oh boy, am I going to make it through that passage? And I think I'd like to get to a point where I stop worrying about that and just enjoy the music. And that's what you really should do, I think.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that this is a phase. And the next phase will probably be when you don't worry about the music.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
That would be the goal. And to work around this issue, because if I played some other simple piece, can I play something that's easy that I can't play very well anymore?
Definitely. I mean, I don't mind if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind making a fool of myself.
Okay.
It's terrible. Oh, by the way, this piece was written by Fernando Sor, great Spanish, 19th century Spanish guitarist. It's a study that, I mean, he wrote many studies, but there's a set of 20 studies, and this is number 1, I think, 1 or 2. See, I'm having problems. In any event, that's enough. You get the sense there were some mistakes and some tension in the hand, and it's very difficult for me to get through the whole thing. And it's a pretty simple piece. I used to be able to play that standing on my head with my eyes closed, So that's the source of frustration. But I'm confident there's a way through this. There's a way around this.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll be looking forward in future episodes of this presentation to maybe hearing to see if you've made any progress.
Yeah.
And demonstrating it.
Sure. That's the challenge. And I'll take it as a challenge.
Would you say that you're entering a new chapter in your life?
Definitely.
And do you think that this chapter, like the guitar, is almost going to be like a gateway?
Yeah, I do. I do think so.
Because you're going to be using another part of your brain, maybe that has kind of gone dormant for a while.
Yeah, that's an aspect of it. But I think music is also a way of sharing what's here, And it's a way of reaching out to people. It's a way of making new friends. It's a way of expressing, well, again, you said it, parts of yourself that have lain dormant for a while, But I think this is just part of a whole strategy of mine right now at this time in my life I'm dedicated to self-improvement. It sounds corny as hell, but that's...
It sounds to me like if you were a world history, that you're about to enter into your renaissance.
I'd like to think of it that way. Yeah.
And that you're coming out of the dark ages.
In a way, yeah.
And that you're seizing upon the Enlightenment ideas that you've been exposed to, and you're putting them into practice.
I couldn't have expressed it any more clearly than that. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to have to write that one down. I'm going to remember that. It can be my mantra. No, but I think it's really important. Life is short, and I think life is to be lived and to be experienced as fully as you can. And even Mir, my friend, I showed you his Facebook post.
Yeah.
Where he talks about how exposing yourself to greatness and great people and making connections with really good people enriches your life by being dedicated to what you do, whether it's a hobby like the guitar or my work as a teacher, mm-hmm. and trying to be as great at those things as you can. Mm-hmm. When I go to work, I don't feel like it's work, you know? Taking care of your body and your mind and being as healthy as you can be. I'm dedicated to all of those things. And when he made that comment on his Facebook post, he said that if you do all of those things, your life, it's like you're on vacation every day. And I think there's some truth to that. And it's funny that just maybe a month ago, a little over a month ago, I dedicated myself to making these changes in my life. And it seems as if I'm not a superstitious man and I don't know what's out there, but it seems like the universe is opening up to me. It seems like these experiences are positive things are starting to come my way because I'm maybe more receptive to those things. I'm not sure what the reasons are, but it definitely does feel like that's happening.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, you were talking about your coping. Oh, I forgot to tell you this, by the way.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, when you were telling Greg and Paul and myself about your difficulty in dealing with impermanence, your mortality.
Right. The void, we talked about that. Yeah.
The void.
Right.
Here's what I did. I thought about that the next day, and I thought that there's 4 fundamental philosophical problems that everybody must deal with. And you know, if you ever meet people who say philosophy is a waste of time, or you know, it's idle pastime or something like that, you should keep in mind that there's 4 philosophical problems that everybody must deal with. And if you don't deal with them, you escape from them by drugs or drinking or some type of
avenue of
escapism.
escape. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's your way of postponing dealing with them. And they are uncertainty, okay? Assigning value, meaning what has importance? Well, I'm going to go after that.
Mm-hmm.
Like have you ever said to somebody you should go after what it is that you like, and they say I don't know what I like. Well, they're still coping with assigning value. See, injustice. Everybody wants to make the world a better place, and standing in the front of that is injustice, and they have to figure out a way to deal with injustice. See, and the 4th one is impermanence, and that's what you were coping with. And I remember waking up in bed the day after we had that discussion, and you were talking about you coping with impermanence, and I remember thinking, this is terrific, because he is doing what you need to do. And there's no answer to these 4 things. It's like things you got to wrestle with. And he's wrestling with it. And I thought, this is fantastic. He's wrestling with us, and he shared with us the fact that he was wrestling with it.
Right.
Whereas if you weren't wrestling with it, right, then there's a chance you would be going down the path of escaping from it. And you're not. You're taking it head on.
Exactly.
Which is a wonderful thing.
Well, it's kind of like the metaphor that you gave to me of the little girl who's having a birthday party or the kid who's having a birthday party.
Yeah.
Would you tell them that, well, don't enjoy the birthday party because it's all going to be over very soon and you're going to have to clean up, it's going to be a big mess, and tomorrow you have to go to school? No, the kid should enjoy the party. So what I'm trying to do is enjoy the party. Life should be lived. And I think that's probably the healthiest way to tackle the philosophical problem of impermanence. You know? I'm not sure about the other three. Assigning value, I think.
You seem to have been doing
I
that.
certainly have done that
Yeah.
without any
Well,
problem.
it was the purchase of the guitar.
Yeah.
That was a dilemma of assigning
Yeah.
value. Is it worth price X?
Yeah.
It's a lot of
Yeah.
money. Is it worth it? Does it have the value?
Yeah.
Then, there's a thing called the exchange value and the use value. Now, the exchange value is what you pay for it.
Right.
And the use value is what you get out of it.
Right.
So, for example, one day you get sick of the fact that you have this television set and you have to keep going over and changing the channel. You want to buy a remote control.
Mm-hmm.
So you go out and you spend the money for the remote control. All right? Now, you use it, and after about 5 years, it breaks. Well, the use value for that remote control was the fact you didn't have to get up and change the channel.
Yeah.
What happened to the use value once it broke? Went down to nothing. Because what can you use a remote control for after it breaks?
Yeah.
Now let's take that and let's apply it.
What can you use?
The guitar.
The guitar. Yeah.
It has an exchange value, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you paid for it. It has a use value, what it does to your life. What will it take for the exchange value to go down to nothing?
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard question to answer.
It is
when
a
comes
hard
to that
question
thing.
to answer.
Imagine buying a painting. What will it take for the use value?